Let me ask you a question that might sound crazy. What if success is a complete illusion? We're taught to believe that fame brings recognition, that if the whole world knows your name, then surely the people from your past will too. But here is a counterintuitive truth: sometimes the brighter your star shines, the more invisible you become to the ones who matter most. This is the unbelievable real-life paradox we're exploring today. The shocking story of how a famous singer returned home, but his own teacher didn't recognize the star he created. On one side of this incredible story, we have Frank Perkins. He's a megastar, a famous singer whose voice is known by millions around the world. He lives a life of unimaginable luxury, a world of private jets and sold-out stadiums. On the other side, we have Cynthia Jordan, a humble and dedicated teacher in a forgotten town, pouring her heart and soul into a struggling school, completely detached from the glittering world of fame. Two vastly different worlds, connected by a secret past and a destiny that is about to bring them crashing back together. But this isn't just a random visit home. Frank is running from something, an emptiness that fame can't fill. He's seeking the one piece of validation that his millions of fans can give him, a single look of recognition from the teacher who first believed in him. It's an emotional pilgrimage to find his soul, but he's about to face the ultimate plot twist, becoming completely unrecognized by the very person whose opinion is the secret key to his own redemption. The irony is as beautiful as it is heartbreaking. This isn't just a story about fame. It's a powerful, heart-aching journey that will make you question everything you think you know about success, kindness, and what it truly means to leave a legacy. We promise you a story filled with surprising moments, quiet acts of humility, and a final resolution that will stay with you long after it's over. We are about to witness what happens when a star, searching for his soul, comes face to face with the teacher who gave him his start, only to be met with a blank stare. Before we dive into this incredible story, we want to know how far our community reaches. Let us know in the comments what beautiful city or town you're watching from right now, so we can imagine the scenery with you. And if you believe in the power of a good story, make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next video, and please, share this with someone you think will be as touched by this story as we are. Well, it's a funny thing about destiny, isn't it? It has a peculiar way of leading you right back to where you started, no matter how far you've flown. For the world-famous singer Frank Perkins, this was a truth hitting him like a freight train. He had returned to the sleepy, forgotten town of his youth, a place that held the secret origins of the star he had become. He wasn't looking for applause or recognition. He was searching for a feeling he'd lost somewhere. Between the sold-out stadiums and the blinding camera flashes, a heart-aching echo of his past. And then he saw her, Cynthia Jordan. She was standing across the street, looking just the same, as if time had kindly forgotten her. The teacher who had first seen the flicker of a fire in a lost boy. An emotional wave crashed over him, a mix of nostalgia and nervous anticipation. He took a breath and walked towards her, a subtle smile playing on his lips, ready for that moment of connection. But as he drew near, her eyes, full of a familiar kindness, simply glanced over him. She looked right through the famous singer, completely unrecognized. You see, for Cynthia, the world wasn't a stage filled with celebrities. It was a classroom filled with dreams. Her focus was absolute, a testament to her unwavering humility. Her mind wasn't on chart-topping hits or global superstars. It was on the bake sale. She was planning for the school's struggling music program. This incredible teacher had no room in her world for a global star, because her heart was already full with the small, everyday needs of the children she served. She was a constant force of nature, a beacon of dedication. Frank just stood there for a moment, frozen on the sidewalk. The experience was more than just a surprise. It was a profound plot twist in his carefully scripted life. All the awards, the fame, the fortunate, all evaporated in the face of that simple, unintentional dismissal. It was a deeply emotional and heart-aching moment of clarity. He realized that the man the world saw, the celebrated Frank Perkins, meant absolutely nothing here. The secret he held, his entire identity, was invisible to the one person he hoped would see it most. It was a strange sort of redemption he hadn't even known he was seeking. To be stripped of his title as a famous singer and just be a man again, standing on a familiar street. Her failure to recognize him wasn't an insult, it was a reflection of her own unwavering character. This wasn't a story of a forgotten student, but perhaps a love story of a different kind of love for purpose, for community, and for overcoming the odds. He felt an odd sense of peace settle over him, a quiet admiration for his old teacher. He knew then that this journey home wasn't going to be about a grand reunion. It was about something deeper, a lesson he still needed to learn from the very same teacher who had set him on his path. This unrecognized star had to understand the world she lived in, a world built on a foundation of kindness and humility that his glamorous life had almost made him forget. What forces had shaped her into this immovable pillar of the community, pouring so much of herself into a place that the world had left behind? To understand Cynthia Jordan, you had to understand the soul of her school. It wasn't a place of polished floors and state-of-the-art equipment. Oh no. It was a place of resilience, held together by sheer will and a whole lot of heart. This dedicated teacher was the living, breathing engine of that place. Every day, she poured her entire being into its halls, fighting an uphill battle against dwindling budgets and general neglect. Her mission was simple yet profound: to nurture the next generation, to make sure every child felt seen. Her classroom was a little haven of creativity in a world that often felt gray. You could see her kindness in the small things: the extra pencil she always had, the snacks she kept in her desk for kids who came to school hungry. She was a master of overcoming limitations, turning old, donated instruments into sources of joy and inspiration. For Cynthia, this wasn't just a job, it was a calling, a fundamental part of her destiny. She was that one special teacher every person hopes to have in their life. She moved with a quiet humility, never seeking praise or recognition for her efforts. While the world outside chased fame and fortune, Cynthia chased moments of breakthrough. Instant a struggling student finally grasped a difficult piece of music, the look of pride on a child's face after their first performance. These were her riches, the currency that truly mattered to her. She was a silent hero, fighting battles that no one else saw and winning them every single day through her unwavering spirit. This was the world Frank had glimpsed, the reason a global star could pass by her completely unrecognized. Her universe was simply too full of purpose to be distracted by the fleeting glow of celebrity. She was an anchor in her community, a steady hand guiding young souls through the often turbulent waters of childhood. The peeling paint on the school walls didn't matter to her. What mattered were the vibrant masterpieces the children painted on them. It was a beautiful, heart-aching reality. Her life was a love story, but not a conventional one. It was a love for potential, a deep and abiding affection for the promise held within each of her students. She saw a future star in every shy child, a future leader in every boisterous teenager. This perspective was her secret gift, the lens through which she viewed the world. She wasn't just teaching music, she was teaching children how to listen to the song in their own hearts, a truly emotional and powerful lesson. And so, she spent her days in this bubble of earnest dedication, completely unaware of the famous singer who was now watching her from a distance. The stark contrast between their two worlds was becoming painfully clear to Frank. He lived in a world of manufactured moments and screaming crowds, while she lived in a world of genuine connection and quiet victories. How could he ever bridge the gap between his life of glitter and her life of grit? Meanwhile, Frank Perkins' world was a whirlwind of blinding lights and deafening applause. He lived in a gilded cage, a life of immense fame and fortune that most people could only dream of. Private jets, designer clothes, mansions in every major city had it all. He was a bona fide star, a name known in every corner of the globe, a man whose voice could bring millions to an emotional standstill. On the surface, it was a perfect life, the very pinnacle of success, and the fulfillment of a seemingly impossible dream. Yet, there was a secret hollowness to it all, a quiet echo in the vast, empty rooms of his success. The roar of the crowd had started to sound like static, the praise of critics like a foreign language he no longer understood. This famous singer had everything, and yet, he felt a profound sense of being disconnected. He was surrounded by people, but was utterly alone, a classic plot twist for a man who seemed to have the world at his feet. The boy from the small town was lost inside the global superstar. That's why he had come home. He wasn't chasing a memory, he was chasing a feeling. He was seeking a genuine connection to the life he had left behind, a way to anchor himself before he drifted away completely. He yearned for the simplicity, the humility, and the heart-aching authenticity that had once been his entire world. It was a desperate search for redemption, a quest to find the part of himself that had traded for fame. He needed to remember who he was before the world told him who he should be. The contrast was staggering. Just that morning, he had woken up in a 5-star hotel suite where every whim was catered to. Now he was standing on a cracked pavement, looking at a school that was literally falling apart, yet felt more real than anything he had experienced in years. The life he had built felt like a fantasy, while Cynthia Jordan's world of struggle and kindness felt like the undeniable truth. He was an unrecognized ghost in his own past, watching the one person who truly mattered. His return was an act of overcoming his own carefully constructed persona. He had to shed the skin of the star to have any hope of finding what he was looking for. This journey wasn't for his fans or for the media, it was a deeply personal, emotional pilgrimage. He was beginning to understand that his destiny wasn't just about making music, it was about honoring the roots from which that music had grown. And those roots were firmly planted in the world of his old teacher. And so, the stage was set for a collision of two completely different universes. The famous singer, armed with immense wealth, but feeling spiritually bankrupt, and the humble teacher, possessing little but enriching the lives of everyone she met. He decided he couldn't just watch from the sidelines anymore. He had to try to speak with her, to see if even a spark of the old connection remained. But how do you approach a past you've so completely left behind? Summoning his courage, Frank made a conscious choice. He swapped his designer clothes for a simple pair of jeans and a faded t-shirt, a disguise meant to strip away the star and reveal the man. He wanted to meet her on equal footing, without the intimidating aura of the famous singer he had become. This was his attempt to turn back time, to be just a person from her past, not a celebrity from a magazine cover. He approached her again, his heart pounding with a nervous but hopeful rhythm. "Excuse me, Mrs. Jordan," he said, his voice softer than the one that filled arenas. He saw a flicker of surprise in her eyes, but not of recognition. It was the polite, slightly weary look of a teacher constantly being approached for one thing or another. Before he could say more, a young girl ran up to Cynthia, tears welling in her eyes, holding a clarinet with a broken key. The world, it seemed, had other plans for this reunion. Destiny was a tricky thing. Without a moment's hesitation, Cynthia Jordan's focus shifted entirely. She politely brushed Frank aside with a gentle, "Just one moment, please," and knelt down to the little girl's level. Her priorities hadn't changed one bit in all these years. The needs of a single, emotional child with a broken instrument outweighed the presence of a mysterious, unrecognized stranger. It was a powerful, heart-aching display of her unwavering dedication, a living testament to her character. Frank stepped back, not offended, but in awe. He had been politely dismissed, and it was the most beautiful rejection he had ever experienced. In his world, people stopped everything for him. Schedules were cleared, meetings were canceled, roads were closed. But here, in the world of his former teacher, a child's quiet sadness was the most important thing on the agenda. It was a profound lesson in humility, delivered unintentionally yet with devastating accuracy. He watched as she examined the clarinet, her expression a mixture of concern and gentle reassurance. She promised the student they would figure out a way to fix it, her voice a balm on the child's distress. This small act of kindness was more powerful than any standing ovation Frank had ever received. It was real. It was pure. It was a love story between a teacher and her calling, playing out right in front of him. This was the overcoming spirit he remembered so well. He realized then that trying to talk to her was the wrong approach. His secret identity as a former student couldn't be revealed with words. It had to be understood by observing her in her element. He was seeing the true essence of the woman who had shaped him, a force of nature disguised as a simple music teacher. He decided to stay hidden in the background, to watch and to learn. And he had a feeling he was about to see something even more extraordinary. From the quiet solitude of a park bench across the street, Frank continued his silent vigil. He watched as the school day ended and the children poured out of the old building, a chaotic symphony of laughter and chatter. He saw Cynthia Jordan saying goodbye to many of them by name, her face lit with a genuine warmth that the sun couldn't match. It was a simple, everyday scene, but for the unrecognized star watching from afar, it was deeply emotional and captivating. Then, he noticed one small boy hanging back, his shoulders slumped and his eyes fixed on the ground. Cynthia immediately went to him, her kind expression shifting to one of gentle concern. She knelt down and spoke to him softly, her body language radiating a comforting and protective energy. Frank couldn't hear the words, but he could see the heart-aching exchange, a secret conversation between a caring teacher and a child in need. He leaned forward, intrigued by this quiet little drama. He watched as Cynthia reached into her own purse, her movements discreet and without any fanfare. She pulled out a few bills and pressed them into the boy's hand, then pointed towards the small diner next to the school. The boy's face, once clouded with sadness, suddenly lit up with a look of pure relief and gratitude. It was a quiet act of kindness, a moment of profound humility that was never meant to have an audience. But Frank saw it all, and it moved him to his very core. The famous singer felt a lump form in his throat. This wasn't a grand gesture for a camera or a calculated move for public praise. This was Cynthia Jordan using her own money he knew she didn't have much of, to make sure a child didn't go hungry. It was a surprise that shouldn't have been a surprise at all, because it was exactly who she was. The purity of that moment was a stark contrast to the often transactional world he lived in, a world of calculated generosity. This single, selfless act of love and overcoming was more powerful than any song he had ever written. It spoke volumes about her character, her legacy, and the quiet, thankless work she did day in and day out. Frank realized that her spirit hadn't just endured, it had grown stronger, more compassionate. This wasn't a plot twist. This was the very essence of the woman he remembered, the teacher who had saved him in more ways than one so many years ago. And as he sat there, the weight of his fame feeling heavier than ever, a vivid memory broke through the fog of time. It was a memory of another hungry boy, another moment of quiet desperation, and the very same teacher who had refused to let him fall. The past was suddenly rushing back to meet the present, and with it, the echo of words that had defined his destiny. The world around Frank dissolved, and suddenly he was no longer a star, but a skinny, shivering boy again. The flashback was so intense, so emotional, that he could almost feel the worn-out fabric of his old jacket and the gnawing hunger in his stomach. He was a child of poverty, a kid with big dreams trapped in a harsh reality, often feeling unrecognized and invisible to the world. His talent was a secret flame that he was afraid would be extinguished by the cold winds of his circumstances. He remembered standing in that very same schoolyard, his hands shoved deep into his pockets to hide the fact that he had no lunch money. He was trying to become invisible, to just blend into the brick wall until the bell rang. But he wasn't invisible to Cynthia Jordan. His teacher had a unique gift for seeing the children who tried the hardest to hide. She approached him not with pity, but with a quiet dignity that made him feel seen for the first time in a long time. She didn't just give him food, she gave him a purpose. She had taken him into the music room, a place that became his sanctuary, and sat with him. It was a heart-aching memory that had become the cornerstone of his entire life. She looked him straight in the eye, her gaze cutting through all his defenses, and spoke the words that would alter the course of his destiny forever. It was a moment of pure, unfiltered kindness that asked for nothing in return. "Frank," she had said, her voice both firm and gentle, a perfect reflection of her character. "Your talent is a gift, but your character is your legacy." The words hung in the air, simple yet profound. She was telling him that his voice was a vessel, but the person he chose to be man he would become was the real masterpiece he would leave behind. It was a lesson in humility, in integrity, and in the true meaning of success. That single sentence had been his compass through the treacherous world of fame. Whenever he felt lost in the excess, whenever the star threatened to eclipse the man, he would remember his teacher's advice. It was the North Star that guided him back to himself, a constant reminder of the importance of overcoming not just external obstacles, but the internal temptations of his own ego. It was the foundation of the love story between a boy and his music. Now sitting on that park bench, the memory felt more potent than ever. He saw the direct line from that moment to this one, from the boy she had saved to the man who now had the power to save her program. It was a beautiful full-circle plot twist orchestrated by fate. He knew what he had to do. His character, his legacy was calling. And his first act would be a grand secret gesture of gratitude. With a renewed sense of purpose, Frank set his plan in motion. He couldn't just walk up and hand his old teacher a check that would shatter the quiet dignity of her world and make it all about him, the famous singer. No, this had to be a secret, an act of kindness from the universe itself. Through his financial manager, he arranged for a large, anonymous donation to be offered to the school, specifically earmarked for the arts and music program. It was a sum so significant it would solve all their problems for years to come. He imagined the surprise and relief on Cynthia's face when she heard the news. He pictured the joy of the students getting new instruments and resources. This was his chance to give back, to honor the legacy she had instilled in him. It felt like the perfect solution, a clean and simple path to redemption that protected both his identity and her humility. The anonymous donor, a mystery benefactor, would be the hero, not the unrecognized star hiding in the shadows. However, Frank Perkins was about to get a masterclass in the unshakable integrity of Cynthia Jordan. When the school's principal, flustered and excited, presented her with the offer, her reaction was not what anyone expected. Instead of celebrating, her eyes narrowed with a cautious suspicion. She had seen this kind of thing before. This wasn't naivety, this was the wisdom of a teacher who had been fighting to protect her school for decades. What a plot twist! She was deeply wary of big, anonymous donations. In her experience, they were often Trojan horses sent by wealthy developers who wanted to buy the school's valuable land. They would soften the school board up with kindness before revealing their true intentions to tear it all down for luxury condos. Cynthia had been overcoming these kinds of threats for years. She stood before the principal, a fierce guardian of her students' future, and delivered her emotional response. "The spirit of this school is not for sale," she said, her voice ringing with a conviction that left no room for argument. She firmly, though politely, instructed the principal to refuse the donation. She would rather struggle and fight for every penny with her community than accept a gift that might compromise the soul of her institution. It was a heart-aching, powerful display of character over comfort, of legacy over a quick fix. Her destiny was to be a protector. From his contact, Frank heard the news of the rejection and was left utterly stunned. His grand gesture, his secret plan for redemption, had been swatted away like an annoying fly. He had completely misjudged the situation, failing to understand the battles his teacher was fighting. And just as he was reeling from this unexpected failure, he learned that the situation at the school was about to get much, much worse. Just days after Cynthia Jordan's principled stand, the other shoe dropped, and it dropped hard. The local school board, citing massive citywide budget shortfalls, held an emergency meeting. The news that came out of it was a dagger to the heart of every student and teacher at the school. They announced a series of drastic, immediate cuts that would be implemented to keep the institution afloat. It was a cold, bureaucratic decision that would have deeply emotional and personal consequences for everyone involved. A grim notice was posted on the school's front door, the black ink on the white paper looking like a death sentence. Frank, still loitering near the school and feeling powerless, watched as Cynthia read it. He saw her shoulders slump, a rare crack in her armor of resilient optimism. The first program on the chopping block, listed right at the top in unforgiving capital letters, was her cherished music program. The very soul of the school, the sanctuary she had built, was to be extinguished. For Cynthia, this was more than a budget cut, it was a personal tragedy. This program was her life's work, a testament to her belief in the power of art to save children. It was a haven for the kids who didn't fit in anywhere else, a place where they could find their voice. The thought of it being silenced was unbearable. This was the greatest challenge she had ever faced, a true test of her spirit of overcoming. It was a cruel, heart-aching blow from a world that didn't value what she did. The irony was crushing. Just days before, she had turned down a fortune, and now she was losing everything. But there was no regret in her eyes, only a fierce, rekindled determination. This wasn't a time for despair, it was a time to fight. The famous singer, watching from his hiding spot, saw the sadness on her face transform into a quiet resolve. The teacher was down, but she was far from out. Her humility would not allow her to give up on her kids. This news sent ripples of disappointment through the small community. The music program was a source of pride, a symbol of the school's resilience. To lose it felt like losing a part of the town's identity. The decision felt impersonal and cruel, another instance of the powerful overlooking the needs of the powerless. It was a classic story of struggle, but Frank knew that with a protagonist like Cynthia, the final chapter had yet to be written. Her secret strength was about to be put on full display. Frank felt a surge of anger and frustration. His secret attempt to help had been blocked by her integrity, and now that very integrity was being punished by a cold, heartless system. He couldn't just stand by and watch her fight this battle alone with limited resources. He had to find another way. As he watched her rally the other teachers and parents, he wondered what her next move would be. What could she possibly do against a force as final as a school board decision? Frank didn't have to wait long to see what Cynthia Jordan's response would be. Her plan wasn't a protest march or an angry letter-writing campaign to the board. It was something far more humble, far more her. He discovered, through the town's ever-active grapevine, that she was organizing a bake sale. A simple, old-fashioned bake sale to be held in the school gymnasium on Saturday. Her grand strategy to save the music program was to sell cupcakes and brownies for $1 apiece. The news hit the famous singer like a physical blow. A bake sale. He, a man who could fund the entire program for a century with a single phone call, was watching the woman who shaped his destiny plan to save it by selling cookies. The sheer humility of her effort was both beautiful and utterly heartbreaking. It was a heart-aching and desperate struggle, a testament to her spirit of overcoming, using the only tools she had at her disposal. He could just picture it, Cynthia and a few other dedicated parents, staying up all night baking, their hands covered in flour, all for the slim hope of keeping the music alive for a few more months. It was a quiet act of defiance, a grassroots effort fueled by love and a whole lot of kindness. It was so pure, so genuine, that it made his own world of extravagant wealth feel obscene and meaningless in comparison. The unrecognized star felt a fresh wave of shame for his earlier, clumsy attempt at help. He was moved by her unwavering spirit, but also deeply saddened by her desperate situation. This incredible teacher, who had given so much to so many, shouldn't have to be fighting like this. She shouldn't have to be counting pennies and dimes to give children the gift of music. A profound and emotional sense of injustice washed over him. The world had its priorities all wrong, celebrating manufactured stars while letting real heroes like Cynthia Jordan struggle in the shadows. This was a major plot twist in his own journey of redemption. He had thought that money was the answer, but he was wrong. The answer wasn't just about providing funds, it was about honoring the spirit behind the struggle. He couldn't just be a secret benefactor anymore. He needed to understand the fight from her perspective, to feel the weight of what she was trying to protect. His destiny was intertwined with this small, desperate bake sale. And so he made a new plan. He would attend the bake sale, still in his disguise, of course. He wouldn't just observe this time, he would participate. He needed to stand in that gymnasium to see her in action and to understand the depth of her passion firsthand. He needed to know why this mattered so much to her, and he had a feeling the answer would change him forever. Saturday arrived, and the school gymnasium was sparsely decorated with handmade signs and colorful streamers, a valiant effort to create a festive atmosphere. The air smelled of sugar and hope. Frank, with his hat pulled down low, walked in and saw Cynthia Jordan behind a long table laden with baked goods. She looked tired but smiled warmly at everyone who approached. He joined the small line, his heart aching at the humble scale of her valiant effort. It was an incredibly emotional scene. One by one, people bought a cookie or a brownie, dropping a few dollars into a coffee can. Frank watched as the can slowly, painstakingly, began to fill. It was a heart-aching display of community support, but he knew it wouldn't be enough. It was a single bucket against a raging fire. When it was his turn, he looked at all the carefully prepared goods, the product of so much effort and kindness, and made a decision. It was time for a little surprise. "He'll take it all," he said, his voice quiet but firm. Cynthia looked up, startled. She must have thought she misheard him. The other people in line murmured in confusion. "I'm sorry?" she asked, a polite frown on her face. "All of it," Frank repeated, pulling out a thick wad of cash from his pocket and placing it on the table. "Every last cookie, every brownie, every cupcake. I'm buying it all." This was a plot twist no one in that gym saw coming. After the initial shock wore off and the transaction was made, the table was empty and the coffee can was overflowing. Before she could properly thank him, Frank, the still unrecognized stranger, looked her in the eyes and asked the question that had been burning in his mind. "Why?" he asked gently. "Why does this matter so much to you?" He wasn't asking about the bake sale, he was asking about her life's work, her endless struggle, her spirit of overcoming. Cynthia paused, her gaze turning distant for a moment as if looking back through time. A soft, nostalgic smile touched her lips. She didn't see a wealthy stranger, she just saw a man who seemed to genuinely want to understand. Her reply wasn't for him, not really. It was a declaration of her deepest belief, the core of her teacher's creed. "Because a boy just like you once taught me that talent can grow anywhere," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Frank's breath caught in his chest. "A boy just like you." The words echoed in the gymnasium. A loving arrow shot straight from the past into the heart of the present. She wasn't talking about him, the famous singer, but she was talking about him, the forgotten student. She had no idea that the very boy who inspired her philosophy was standing right in front of her. The secret was still safe, but the truth of her impact was finally, beautifully revealed. In that one, heart-aching moment, the entire world shifted on its axis for Frank Perkins. He was overwhelmed with a wave of emotion so powerful it almost brought him to his knees. Her words, "a boy just like you," were the most profound recognition he could have ever received, precisely because it was unintentional. She wasn't seeing the star, she was seeing the potential, the memory of a struggling child, which was a far greater honor. His quest for redemption was reaching its climax. He finally understood. All these years, he thought his success was the result of his talent, his hard work, his destiny. But he was wrong. The true force behind his journey, the secret engine that had propelled him to stardom, was the unwavering character of this incredible teacher. Her belief in him, all those years ago, had been the spark. And her virtuous character, which he was witnessing now, was the very same fire that had kept him going. It was a love story, he realized, but not the romantic kind. It was a story of a teacher's unconditional love for her students' potential. A love so strong it could change the world, one child at a time. Her kindness, her humility, her relentless spirit of overcoming fears weren't just admirable traits. They were the active ingredients in his own success. She had given him more than music lessons, she had given him a blueprint for a meaningful life. This was a plot twist far greater than any had experienced in the music industry. The surprise wasn't that she didn't recognize him. The surprise was that she had always seen him. The real him, the boy with a gift who just needed a chance. The unrecognized feeling vanished, replaced by a deep and humbling sense of connection. He wasn't a stranger buying cupcakes, he was the living legacy of her faith. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw not just a tired teacher at a bake sale, but a giant. A quiet hero whose impact was measured not in album sales or awards, but in the lives she had irrevocably changed. His emotional journey home had led him to this single crystallizing moment of truth. He felt a profound sense of gratitude, a debt that could never truly be repaid, but he knew he had to try. The time for small secret gestures was over. Buying out a bake sale was a kind act, but it was a bandage on a gaping wound. Her struggle deserved more than that. Her legacy deserved to be celebrated, not just saved. A new plan began to form in his mind, one that was bigger, bolder, and would finally bring the truth into the light. He had to show the world the star who had created him. Fueled by his emotional epiphany, Frank moved with newfound clarity and purpose. He got on the phone with his team, his voice filled with an authority and passion they hadn't heard in years. The instructions were precise and non-negotiable. He wasn't just making a donation, he was orchestrating a surprise delivery of hope. He spared no expense, ordering the best instruments money could buy: gleaming trumpets, beautiful violins, a brand new grand piano, and everything in between. A few days later, a massive delivery truck, with no logos or markings, rumbled down the quiet street and parked in front of the school. The driver, under strict orders, simply handed over a manifest that said "a gift from a friend" and started unloading crate after crate. Cynthia Jordan, alerted by the commotion, came outside, her face a mask of utter confusion. She thought it was a mistake, a delivery for the wrong address. This kind of thing just didn't happen here. As the crates were opened, a collective gasp went through the small crowd of teachers and students that had gathered. Inside were dozens of brand new, state-of-the-art instruments, still wrapped in plastic, shining under the afternoon sun. It was an impossible, heart-aching sight. For a school that had been fighting over broken clarinet keys and taping up old drum skins, this was like a treasure chest from a fairy tale. It was a miracle delivered to their doorstep. Cynthia was left completely speechless. She walked among the instruments as if in a daze, running a hand over the polished wood of a cello, lightly touching the keys of a new keyboard. Tears welled in her eyes, tears of disbelief, of gratitude, and of overwhelming joy. Who would do this? Who was this secret benefactor, this anonymous angel who had answered a prayer she had barely dared to whisper? The kindness of the act was almost too much to comprehend. The gift revitalized the entire school. The news of the miracle delivery spread like wildfire, injecting a much-needed dose of optimism into the community. The budget cuts were still a threat, but this incredible act of generosity was a powerful symbol of hope, a sign that they weren't forgotten. For Cynthia, the teacher who had given so much and asked for so little, it was a moment of profound emotional validation for her life's work. Her faith in the goodness of people was reaffirmed. Watching from a distance, Frank felt a deep satisfaction, but he knew this was still only a partial solution. The instruments were just tools, they didn't guarantee the program's future. The secret was becoming a burden, and he realized that the greatest gift he could give her wasn't money or equipment, but recognition. The time had come to stop hiding. He had to use his own platform, his own star power, to secure her legacy once and for all. The next phase of Frank's plan was audacious. He decided the secret had gone on long enough, it was time to merge his two worlds. He announced that his foundation would be hosting a massive, free benefit concert for the town, right in the main square. The news created an unprecedented buzz. A global superstar, the famous singer who was their hometown hero, was putting on a show just for them. It was the biggest event the town had ever seen. The official purpose of the concert was to support community arts and education, a vague but noble cause that everyone could get behind. But Frank had a much more specific goal in mind. In all the promotional materials, on every poster and radio spot, there was a tantalizing line that drove speculation wild. The concert would feature a performance by Frank Perkins himself, along with an unseen Alpha Time special guest, a surprise that promised to be truly unforgettable. The town was electric with anticipation. Who could this special guest be? Another famous singer? A legendary musician? The guessing games became the main topic of conversation in every diner and shop. Frank, meanwhile, was meticulously planning every detail of the evening. This wasn't just another performance for him, it was the most important show of his life. It was his public act of redemption, the culmination of his emotional journey home. He made sure a special invitation was delivered personally to Cynthia Jordan. It didn't mention his name, of course. It was simply an invitation for the town's beloved music teacher to attend the concert as a guest of honor, with a reserved seat waiting for her. He knew she would be reluctant to accept any special treatment, but he hoped the cause would be enough to convince her to come. The entire event was, after all, a love story dedicated to her. This was a high-stakes gamble. He was about to lay his secret bare in front of the entire world, and he had no idea how she would react. Would she be happy, angry, embarrassed by the public spectacle? The plot twist was no longer a secret he was observing, it was one he was actively creating. His destiny and hers were about to collide on a very public stage, and the outcome was anything but certain. It was an overcoming of his own fear of vulnerability. As the day of the concert arrived, the town square was packed with thousands of people, their faces filled with excitement and hometown pride. The stage was lit, the atmosphere was magical, and everything was in place. Frank stood backstage, his heart pounding harder than it did before his first ever performance. He wasn't nervous about singing, he was nervous about finally telling the truth. The star was about to thank his creator. Cynthia Jordan, true to her nature, almost didn't go. A big, flashy concert wasn't really her scene, and she felt there was still so much work to be done. But her students and fellow teachers insisted. They told her she deserved a night off, a chance to celebrate the cause she championed every day. Reluctantly, she agreed, not for the spectacle, but for the hope it represented. The event was, after all, raising money for arts education. She arrived, and with her characteristic humility, completely ignored the special reserved seat with her name on it near the front. She couldn't bear the thought of taking a prime spot that a child might enjoy more. Instead, she found a place at the very back of the crowd, leaning against an old oak tree where she could see the stage but remain unnoticed. She was just another face in the crowd, an unrecognized teacher happy to support a good cause. From her vantage point, the sheer scale of the event was breathtaking. She had never seen the town square so alive, so vibrant with energy and joy. It was a heart-aching sight. She felt a quiet sense of gratitude for this famous singer, this boy from their town who had made it big and hadn't forgotten where he came from. He was using his star power for something good, and for a teacher like her, that was the ultimate measure of a person's character. Her hopes for the evening were modest. She was simply praying that the event would raise enough money to keep her program alive for one more year. That was the extent of her dream. One more year of teaching music, one more year of giving her students a creative outlet, one more year of overcoming the odds. She had no grand illusions. She was a pragmatist, grounded in the reality of her day-to-day struggle. The idea of a long-term solution felt like a distant fantasy. She listened to the opening acts, enjoying the music and the infectious happiness of the crowd. The Ancien Alpha Time special guest was a fun mystery, but she didn't give it much thought. Her mind was on her students, on the new instruments that had so mysteriously appeared, and on the fight that lay ahead. The concert was a wonderful, emotional distraction, but tomorrow she knew the fight would continue. Her destiny was one of persistence. Then the lights dimmed. A hush fell over the thousands of people. The moment everyone had been waiting for had arrived. A lone spotlight hit the center of the stage, and a figure walked out from the wings. Cynthia leaned forward slightly, her curiosity finally piqued, ready to see the big surprise. She had absolutely no idea that her entire world was about to be turned upside down. The figure that walked onto the stage was, of course, the megastar Frank Perkins himself. The crowd erupted in a deafening roar, a wave of adoration washing over the town square. He smiled, waved, and soaked it in for a moment, the picture of a confident, globally famous singer. But his eyes weren't playing to the crowd. As the cheers continued, he walked to the front of the stage and immediately began to scan the thousands of faces, his gaze intense and searching. He wasn't looking for a camera or a VIP. He was looking for one specific person. His eyes moved methodically over the cheering fans, over the families, over the teenagers sitting on each other's shoulders. He looked past the front rows, his search growing more urgent, more focused. Cynthia, from her spot way at the back, watched this curious behavior, a small frown of confusion on her face. What could he possibly be looking for? The plot twist was that the special guest wasn't someone else coming on stage. The surprise was what the star was about to do. He ignored the adoring masses, his entire being concentrated on this one secret mission. And then he saw her, standing in the shadows at the very edge of the crowd, leaning against that old oak tree. Their eyes met across the vast distance, and for the first time, a flicker of true, dawning recognition appeared on Cynthia Jordan's face. In that instant, Frank raised a hand, and the cheering crowd, sensing a shift in the emotional atmosphere, slowly began to quiet down. The silence that followed was even more powerful than the noise had been. Thousands of people stood in rapt attention, their eyes darting between the star on the stage and the humble, unrecognized teacher he was now staring at with an expression of profound reverence. It was a heart-aching and unbelievably tense moment. He didn't start with a song. He didn't start with a "Hello, hometown." He just stood there, holding the gaze of his former teacher, letting the weight of the moment sink in. The entire town, the entire world watching via the livestream, was witnessing a story reach its destined climax. The famous singer was about to reveal the secret he had been carrying, the truth of his journey, and the identity of the person who had made it all possible. Cynthia's heart began to pound in her chest. She felt 1,000 pairs of eyes turning towards her. She was no longer anonymous, no longer in the background. The spotlight, both literal and metaphorical, was swinging in her direction. Why was he looking at her like that? What was happening? The kindness in his eyes was familiar, but the context was impossibly surreal. Her quiet life was about to become very, very public. With the entire town holding its breath, Frank Perkins spoke into the microphone, his voice resonating with a deep, emotional gravity. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his eyes never leaving Cynthia. "In told a star. People say I have a gift." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "But what you may not know, what the world doesn't know, is that every note I've ever sung, every success I've ever had, I owe to one woman." The kindness in his voice was unmistakable. A murmur went through the crowd. This was the surprise, the plot twist no one had anticipated. "That woman taught me that talent is a gift, but character is your legacy," he continued, his voice cracking slightly. "She was my teacher when I was a hungry, lost kid who had nothing but a dream." He then raised his arm and pointed directly towards the back of the crowd. "And that woman is standing right back there. Her name is Cynthia Jordan." A spotlight operator, catching on, swung a bright beam onto the old oak tree, illuminating a stunned and completely overwhelmed Cynthia. She looked like a deer in headlights, her mind struggling to process the impossible situation. People turned, their faces a mixture of shock and dawning respect. "Cynthia," Frank called out, his voice now a gentle plea. "Could you please come up here?" The invitation was met with a wave of encouraging applause. Hesitantly, urged on by those around her, the teacher made her way through the parting crowd. A sea of faces now recognizing her, not just as the local music teacher, but as the secret architect of a superstar. She walked toward the stage in a daze. When she reached the steps, the famous singer came down to meet her, took her hand, and led her to the center of the stage. The world was watching this incredible, heartaching reunion. And then, in an act of profound humility and redemption that would be talked about for years, the global star Frank Perkins got down on one knee before his teacher. He didn't propose, he thanked her. "You saved my life, Cynthia," he whispered, loud enough for the microphone to pick up. "Now let me secure your legacy." He stood up, and with tears streaming down his face, he made one final grand announcement to the world. "Tonight," he declared, "we are not just saving a music program. We are launching the new Cynthia Jordan Academy of Music, fully funded, forever." The crowd erupted in a roar that dwarfed anything that had come before. At that moment, as she looked at the man on stage, Cynthia finally, truly saw him. Not the celebrity, not the famous singer, but the heart of the determined, talented, and good-charactered boy she had never, ever forgotten, living inside the man the world adored. Her destiny, and his, had finally come full circle. And so, a journey that began with a famous singer feeling completely unrecognized, ends with the whole world finally recognizing the true star of the story, his teacher. What an incredible emotional story of destiny, humility, and the quiet power of kindness. It's a beautiful reminder that our legacy isn't measured in awards or fame, but in the lives we touch and the potential we nurture in others. Frank Perkins had the world's adoration, but he had to return home to find his soul, reminding us all that sometimes the greatest act of overcoming is simply remembering where we came from. This heartaching story really makes you think, doesn't it? It shows that a single teacher, armed with nothing but belief and compassion, can truly change the course of a life. The love story between a mentor and a student is one of the most powerful there is, and the final plot twist of him kneeling before her was the ultimate act of redemption. It was a testament to the fact that true character will always shine brighter than any spotlight. We would love to hear what you think. What was the most impactful moment for you? Did you expect a different ending? Or did you love the way their story came full circle? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, please show your support by giving it a like and subscribing to our channel so you never miss out on our next video. We have so many more powerful stories to share, so be sure to check out our older videos and join us again soon. Thank you for being here with us today.